Good morning and happy Friday to you. We are getting closer and closer to more of the holidays for so many different faiths. It's a great time of year. It's also a time of year in which we can get lost. And so the third chapter of my book is on mindfulness. And as you know, the series is about just really an introduction to my latest book coming out, Real Women Change the World, Letting the Good Girl Die so the Real Woman Can Live, calling us to stop being that good girl and start being the real woman we have become as adults, as women who have life experience and have hopefully a great sense of self-awareness and self-direction going on for us. And so today I want to talk about chapter 3, just because it's a subject I want you to know about. Whether you bought this book or not, it's a subject that I think is so immensely important. And it truly is about mindfulness. In the old days, we had meditation, we had prayer. I think it's just the newest term for really the same practices that have been here for millennia with us, that millenniums have just redefined, just to present in a new way an absolute necessity that has always existed. And that is the ability to, if you will, step aside from your own life. If you can imagine you're sitting in a chair here, and out there at arm's length is your family and your career and your friends and your home and all of those things you brought in. That's the life you've created for yourself. But over here sits you, sits this embodied soul or this embodied essence, whatever you're comfortable calling it. There is this separate entity that is apart from the entire world she has created for herself, and that the world has created simultaneously. All of that is going on in the background. So if you will, notice that, especially at the holidays, it is just action-packed. There is so much to do. I've spoken to so many friends who are frantic. A girlfriend yesterday getting out at 7:30 in the morning to get to the stores before the crowds came in. That's, the last minute shopping pieces, the insanity, if you will, of what the culture can create if you choose to get lost in it. So this gift of mindfulness, and it's our way of recognizing that the internet exists, media exists, all the drama in the news exists. Every day the world is ending. Every day there's another crisis. There's always something for you to get lost in so that you disappear. With the practice of mindfulness, you separate from all of that. You become so much more present in your world, leaving the rest of it out there. You become aware of what's going on in your life. I can tell you that as a practice for me, every morning when I wake up, I stretch, fix my covers, and I stay under my wonderful covers in the midst of these cold fall days. And just take a look. How do I feel? How does my body feel? Putting aside all the other things that may be going on in the house, that may not be going on in the house, how do I feel as I wake up? Am I stressed? What's going on emotionally? Am I down? Am I up? Am I excited about the day? Is there something happening that I've been thinking about even while I was sleeping and I can't wait to get out of bed to do? Is there something I'm dreading? What's going on in my body energetically? Is it dread? Is it joy? Is it whatever? What's happening physically? Is there some part of me that hurts? Is there some part of me that feels congested and heavy? Or do I feel very fluid first thing in the morning? What's going on? When you can spend, honestly, this is a practice I highly recommend you look at and that you try. 5 minutes every morning before you even get out of bed. Let go of the rest of the world and focus on yourself. This is that healthy self-centered. It is not selfish, it's healthy self-centered. Spend 5 minutes in the morning just laying in bed. What's going on for you? What is your experience physically of yourself? What's your experience emotionally about what's going on with you? What spiritual belief did you wake up with this morning? Life is horrible and then you die? or life is an adventure. Where did you wake up spiritually? Where did you wake up emotionally, anxious, depressed? Where did you wake up physically? Just as I explained to you. Take the time to do that. By the time you put your feet on the floor, there's an awareness that there is a separate you about to enter the world she created. And then if you work outside of the home, by the time you drive away, you're entering a world others have created. So be conscious of this separate entity. When you don't, you disappear during the day. And unfortunately, back in my days of being an active therapist, so many would walk into my office and don't know where they got lost, don't know what happened in their lives, because the practice of mindfulness didn't take place. Take a look at it. Who are you? Before you leave, know that. Know what's going on for you. Because when you have that awareness before you even get out of bed, and you hold on to that, mindfully living present during the day, you walk into your day, whether you're at a meeting, whether you're in the car, and there's all kinds of craziness going on the highway. And we all know that one, when you're getting on the highway and someone has to pass you immediately, get in front of you, and then they do 20 miles below the speed limit. Happens to all of us. You can forget about you and get so hooked into that individual that you start to disappear. And then you're wondering, I can't believe I said that. Can't believe I did that. Yeah, because you weren't home. Step back, stay present to you, and take that throughout the day. In the evening as well, when I'm in bed, just before I fall asleep, I do that same kind of recollection. I look over my day from the moment I get out of bed till that moment when I'm in bed. What was going on for me? And I don't go through the exact things I said or did. I go back, what was my experience? What was my experience today? Did I come in and out of depression? Did I come in and out of feeling helpless or hopeless? Did I come in and out of rage? Was I in and out of joy? What story was I telling myself that day? Because the stories we tell ourselves define the energy we walk around in all day. The stories we create, and we do create these stories, because everything in life is about how you see it. We create stories and we see the world through the vision of that story. If my story is nobody likes me, I walk into a store today and there's 10 in line and nobody even notices I'm there, it's because nobody likes me. If I know the world is terrific, it's 10 in line, and I know people are great and it's a great season, I'm going to be talking to other people in line. It all depends. Where am I coming from? What's the energy I'm walking around with? And it's all based on what story am I telling myself. So as I lay in bed at night, what story did I tell myself today? When we begin to do that, you begin to be so much more consciously aware of you. You're not caught in all the drama of the outside world. You're aware of you. What are the stories you tell yourself every day? Review it at night, because you may intellectually believe you do it one way. But as you do a day review, you recognize, the story I told myself today wasn't what I thought it was. And then you have the power to change the story you tell yourself tomorrow. All of this is a result of the practice of mindfulness. Being mindful of what you're thinking, being mindful of what you're feeling, being mindful of the energy you're putting in your body as well as what you're putting out into the world. Because I can assure you, people react to the energy you put in the world far more than they react to what you say. What you say is a small part of it. How you say it, the energy you put out into it, is truly what has the impact. So just take a look at that. It's being in the story, but not being defined by the story. You know what the story is and you go out and you work it, but it doesn't define who you are. You are very separate from that. It is a wonderful, wonderful gift you give yourself if you develop that ability to be absolutely present. The initial gift of all of this, the initial gift of mindfulness, is that you truly walk through life far more peacefully, far more at home in your own skin, far more comfortable in life. That's the initial easy one. And don't we all deserve less stress? Don't we all deserve to be more comfortable in our own skin and less anxious, less pushed and pulled, less reactionary, and more responsive? Because when we're not in that state of mindfulness, and I'm not saying that mindfulness is something you do for 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes at night. Those are conscious exercises. Mindfulness needs to become a way of life. It's not just a practice, it becomes a way of life. That's the gift you give yourself. So the morning and the afternoon, and morning and evenings are just your conscious moments to stop and look. But when you develop that awareness and you live in it, you now have a mindful way of life. You now are doing this on a regular basis. And you're looking at it always, looking at, are you caught in a story? And you'll notice it if you're used to being at peace. You know the moment you're out of peace. Take a look at that. One clear example for you that may make this more at home. God forbid, but if you have ever been in a crisis situation, a real panic-producing situation for some, notice that frequently there's that one person who in the midst of a crisis, while everybody else is going into panic, everybody else is going into reaction, you've got some groups over here crying, some groups over here rolling in a ball, feeling hopeless, others running around in circles trying to take charge, that there is one person that is certainly not disconnected because they don't have these emotional reactions. They're sitting here in peace. And what they are doing is observing. What's the problem? What needs to get done? What's the best way, the most efficient and the most effective way to do that? What tools do I have available to me to deal with what's going on? And that person then, after a minute, 5 minutes, whatever is needed, then consciously and mindfully begins to deal with what needs to be done. They step back, whether it's momentary or otherwise. When it first begins, they're the one that call 911, or they call for help. They call for whatever they need to do. They're the one that starts taking charge, if you will, not control, but starts taking charge. They know what needs to get done and they can direct people to go help out. That person is no different than the rest of us. The differentiating factor is that that person lives mindfully. That person is the person you can trust in any situation, will be present, will be able to deal, will not get lost in the story, will not get lost in the panic, will not get lost in the crises. And you do know in most of our lives, crises is self-created. Some people have problems and some people have crises. And we all know people who go from crisis to crisis to crisis. Mindfulness is not one of their daily practices, I can assure you, because everybody's life has problems, everybody's life has difficulties. But a crisis is more times than not a mindset. Problems are a given. Crises is more times than not a mindset. Take a look at that. It's so important to see that, because when life is traumatic and you're not in life, you're over here, a part of it, but separate from it, you have the ability to deal, always. When you don't have that ability to deal, it's because at some point you chose self-betrayal. At some point you became the good girl with the sense of powerlessness who was reacting to. And she ends up either trying to protect the world at that moment and feeling overwhelmed. She tries to become the good girl on a regular basis. So she may be creating crisis as a way of life, being a good girl and rescuing and saving others. She frequently spends so much time focusing on other people that any mindfulness about her life, about her needs, about her wants disappear. As the good girl, notice that you spend so much time disconnected from your own inner strength, your own inner wisdom, your own creativity, because all of your time is focused on helping the other, so that you don't even get to recognize how creative you are in problem solving. You don't get to recognize how empathic you are. You are so busy being on, if you will. You're being on at all times. You don't have time to step back and recognize you and look at what you need and look at what's going on for you. Because in my experience, frequently, the good girl is so busy giving that if she took a half an hour to separate, have lunch by herself, Have time to meditate, have time to separate and do some mindfulness. She would walk out and she would be giving from her fullness rather than her depletion. Because good girls become so disconnected to what's going on with them, they're continuously giving from depletion. All right? If we make this, and this is my desire, to make this awareness a much more global, away from just the individual woman. Imagine if all of us as men and women practice mindfulness. Our ability to deal with all problems, all global problems, state problems, city problems, home problems, personal problems, from a place of all of us being mindful rather than in reaction. What an amazing world it would be. If you become the real woman, if you own that power, you own that ability, then you know on a cellular level what needs to get done. You know on a cellular level as you go through your life mindfully as a real woman. You know what you're experiencing, you know what you need to do, and you recognize that as a real woman who practices mindfulness, that no matter what's going on, you can handle it. No matter what is going on, you can do this. Because when you are mindful, you're conscious of all of your strengths. You're conscious of all of your limitations, and you know how to compensate for them, because it wouldn't be the first time, whether you're in your 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, or 80s, when you recognize a vulnerability, when you recognize a fear. If you've been noticing them through the practice of mindfulness, you also know how to compensate. You know how to bring yourself out of the fear and into action. This is truly a way of life I would love to offer you. And within my book, I certainly talk about this in far greater detail. But do look that in the practice of mindfulness, we get to separate the good girl who runs around trying to caretake the world. And we bring out the woman who is able to see what needs to get done, recognize those who want help, because not everybody does want help, and you have the ability to support those who want to be supported. It's a gift you give yourself because it allows you peace and relaxation. Those moments of prayer, those moments of separation, that I am here and the world I've created is over there. I believe each one of us has our own personal journey. Each one of us has our own spiritual purpose. When you connect to that spiritual purpose, when you connect to your own personal journey, you don't disappear as you go about your life, being there, being supportive, and living your life purpose in whatever way that is, whatever way you're called. To summarize, when we have a practice of mindfulness, we accept life for what it is. We don't do victim. We recognize and respect that everybody else is walking their own journey, and we don't get caught up in rushing around saving the world. We stay present. We support those who want to be supported. To the extent that we can, we give from our fullness, not our depletion. When we walk in mindfulness and we're conscious that this is our spiritual journey, we trust the process. We begin to see that when we make a decision, when we know we're following our purpose, amazingly, it's as if all these curtains open and the right kinds of things show up in your life. And we never know what that's going to be. We are absolutely connected to ourselves, and because we are, and we see the separateness, the healthy, holy separateness of our own embodied soul, we can honor the separateness of somebody else without needing to control them or manipulate them. And because we recognize them walking their journey, we have a far greater ability to have intimacy, because intimacy requires two separate people. When you become so enmeshed, when you become so blended, then there is no longer an I. And the healthiest us are two separate I's that have decided to join together. You also then feel safe because nobody can consume you. You won't disappear in your relationships. And because you're not taking life so extremely seriously, your sense of humor remains. And I have for years had a saying that faith and humor are what get us through this journey. We need an immense amount of faith and we need humor to get through this journey. And that gives you permission to play. Humor gives you permission to play, gives you permission to laugh at yourself. We're all a wee bit crazy. And when you can be present in your own mindfulness, you're aware of your craziness. You don't need to deny it or defend it. It's welcome to the real world. another common phrase I use, welcome to the real world and welcome to humanity. We are all human. Recognize that it's the adult woman, it's the real woman that practices mindfulness, not the good girl. The good girl doesn't have permission from herself to step back, focus on who she is, focus on her experience, as I said earlier, first thing in the morning. And what is your experience of you later at night? Take that time to reinforce the real woman. Take that time to practice mindfulness if you don't have a habit, if you don't have a way of life, if you don't have a practice. Start simply, as I said in the very beginning. Before you get out of the bed in the morning, how do you feel? What's happening for you? How do you feel spiritually, emotionally, and physically? And at the end of the day, go through the same process. How are you emotionally, spiritually, and physically as you crawl into bed at night? Go to bed tired, not exhausted. Go to bed at peace. Is there something you needed to finish? And I'm not talking about a project, something within you emotionally, or in a conversation with someone that you needed to finish so that you can go to bed feeling completely at peace. Do what you need to do. If you do that, you recognize that there's no room in your life for drama. There's no room in your life for crises. And you also have permission then, in reinforcing this mindfulness, to do your own self-care, whether that means a bubble bath, whether that means a conversation with a girlfriend on the phone, or an occasion going out for an evening with a group of girlfriends and just laughing and having a good time. Because never forget, when you are mindful of you, there is you in all the roles you play. There is you, the mom. There is you, the business owner or the employee. There is you, the partner or the spouse. There is you, the girlfriend. But there's always you. It's been a pleasure being with you again this week. Do enjoy. I look forward to speaking with you next Friday, 10 o'clock. Have a great weekend and happy holidays.